Hi everyone, my name is Maria Mendez. I'm the Training and Technical Assistance Manager here at CCASA. Thank you for watching this video. We are just going to go over some of the Title IX final rule changes and things that are important to know. Agueda Morgan, Director of Programs, is here with us to share this information with you. Agueda?
Thank you, Maria. Hi, good afternoon to you all. And yeah, thank you for looking at this reviewing this short information webinar. So let's start. We are going to talk today about Title IX final rules. Probably some of this information, it might be new for some of you, and for others will be something that you already know. But we just want to take a couple, a little bit of time and review some of the main things that we know about Title IX, the new revised Title IX. So let's see. Okay, why are you not moving now? Okay. First, we're going to start with sharing with you all a couple of things that we know that are involved with campus and is specifically related to Colorado and state laws in Colorado. First of all, we would like to share with you all that, a little bit of a timeline. May 6th, the clock started for the Misconduct Advisory Committee to make recommendations for the General Assembly. So a little bit of background with this is that last year, Colorado passed a specific state law, SB 19007, that is specifically for Colorado and it provides a guidance for college campuses and universities here in Colorado. It's a state law. Part of that state law was the creation of a committee, a Misconduct Advisory Committee. And for that committee, May 6th, the clock started for them to review 4 major subjects that they had to finalize through this committee, so that they just started working May 6th, and they have 90 days to finalize and bring recommendations to General Assembly here in Colorado. The second important date is May 26th. The General Assembly will be reconvening, possibly reconvening, and CCASA has 2 primary bills. The state here in the state is still in the process. Let's go on. So another important date for you all to know is July 16. CCASA will be convening the annual state campus meeting that we have every year. This year will be virtual, so please be on the lookout for any announcements that we'll be having soon in relation to, the online campus meeting this year. So the next date that we have is August 4th. The Sexual Misconduct Advisory Committee delivers recommendations. That's a very important date that goes along with what I already mentioned at the beginning. So the deadline for them is August 4th, where then they will be providing their recommendations to the General Assembly. So that's a very important date for us here in Colorado, and specifically for you all who provide services related to sexual misconduct at campuses. August 14, there is another important date, which is the final Title IX rule will be implemented. That's the deadline where the federal government has provided us that date. That August 14 is the implementation deadline for the new Title IX rule. Moving along. So a couple little things that we wanted to share with you all in relation to information at a national level. Some of the important things here is that at a national level, the new Title IX rule is scheduled to take place, like I already mentioned, August 14. We also know the Know Your Nine, IROC, and National Women Law Center and other main national agencies are suing the administration. So that's really important to know, and for all of us to be on the lookout to see in which ways we can support that national effort. So be in tune with us for more information about those things once we get to know what they're doing and how we can provide some support. At this point, we know that they're asking to be prepared and to do some internal, so statewide campaigns in your own campuses to bring awareness of the importance of creating better efforts to provide support to advocates, to survivors at the campus level. The last one, but not least one, schools can create more protections, like I said, for their individual institutions. So what we wanted to talk about that is that, again, the main campaign at the national level is that at this point right now is to getting to understand the new Title IX, really look at the key points that are important to be aware of, and to start creating campaigns in your own campuses, in the institutions. So to really the call there is for all of us as advocates to work in our own individual communities and create awareness, create make sure that we're talking to the administrators in our campuses to bring awareness about how to make these new rules, to create new rules within our own campuses with internal policies that is going to be really focused on providing equal access and equal opportunities, so for the survivors of sexual violence in campuses. Okay. So a couple things here. This is information that we got from the couple meetings that have been happening around the national level. More specifically, the couple things that they wanted to highlight was 6 things that we know that were changed that actually are benefiting survivors of sexual violence, or at least bring equity in some way to survivors of sexual violence. So in relation to the rule. Okay, so what we know right now at a national level, what we can consider some important wins from win changes that they were made to the final rule. So the first one that we know is the no more incentive to choose heightened standards of evidence. So this one, the way that we can look at it is that the schools now have, they will not be penalized for choosing a lower standard or something that they feel more adequate. Like, I shouldn't say something, between the 2 possible options, which one of them is clear and convincing evidence, or the preponderance of evidence. So now, one caveat on this rule, something that we really need to keep in mind, is that once the school chooses one of them, that has to apply for all students and staff. So it's really important for those schools who have, for example, unionized teachers. So staff that is unionized, the unions usually are requiring or demanding that if a staff member of them, it's going to be involved in a case like this, that they have to use clear and convincing standards of evidence for the unionized staffs. Therefore, that school may not have a choice, and they will have to go for clear and convincing for everybody, staff and students. So this is something that is something important to remember as the school is going through the piecing the way, providing or putting together their policies, that they need to make sure that they apply the same rule for everybody. So secondly, we have the high school disclosure. So this is specifically for K-12. So the new rules will state the high school disclosures. Students will be allowed to disclose to any staff, any school staff, so that constitutes actual knowledge, triggering therefore their school's obligation to respond to that student. So for example, if the student reports any case of sexual misconduct to a counselor or a school driver, the bus driver, that will constitute disclosure to that school. Therefore, they have the obligation to respond. So that person will have to find the person that the student discloses to has to go and find the appropriate person who will handle this case, and therefore activate the obligation to respond for that school, that student. The third one, the rape shield protection. So this is really important. Previous sexual history is irrelevant and cannot be used as evidence in any Title IX investigation or hearing. So very important, very strong protection for survivors. So next one, we have the safe harbor. So with this one, what we can kind of understand is that with the current rule, schools will not have a map to avoid later accountability in court for inadequate responses or mistreatment to victims. This is really important. This whole section was wiped out from the new rule. This is a great win for advocates. So next, we have the support measures. So in regards to these, regardless of whether the survivor files a formal complaint, the survivor should have access to supportive measures like free counseling or academic accommodations. So no matter what, even if the student reports and goes on with a Title IX investigation or not, they have access to supportive measures. For us advocates, it's really important to keep that in mind and to let survivors know that they don't have to make a report if they really don't want to, but they still have access to counseling and any other accommodations they may need. Lastly, we have the additional definitions. So the final rule explicitly states that dating violence, domestic violence, and stalking are prohibited forms of sexual harassment. So now we have clear definitions for these, although we know there's other things that are important that are not defined. But these are really important wings. This is something that we know there has been a change, and there is in support or protections for students who are victims of sexual harassment. All right. Okay, moving along. So a couple of things that we would like to highlight are the important things that you need to pay attention when you're looking at the Title IX final rule. Okay, we are going to start first is the off-campus plus the study abroad. This is something that we are really concerned about it at this point, that any kind of sexual misconduct that happens in anything that is related to the student and in a campus program that is off campus. So meaning that the event or students abroad, those cases the institutions are really not mandated to do anything about it. They don't have to really provide any go on and do any investigation. So this is a very big concern that we have. So what's going to happen to those students and who's going to provide support to them? They're really left out of these protections. So moving along to the second one, cross-examination by party representative. So this is, again, a really important concern that we have that we need to keep in mind, because now with the new rule, cross-examination by anyone who the person, the student who is being accused decides to point out, it will be allowed. Let me just, give me 1 second here. Yes, so what is important about this is that this means the survivor can be cross-examined for example, by the parents of this accused student, by the friend of the student, by any fraternity or any brothers or sorority sisters, whoever they decide and they appoint, that they can come in and basically do a cross-examination, which is really, really concerning, and which also could allow other things that are really going to be triggerings for survivors who are going through this process. It will be really, really traumatizing. It's a big increase in risk. So number 3 is the removal of timeline. So with the current regulations, now they have really there's no definition of or a framework that provides a timeline. So for example, here before we had between 60 or 90 days, I believe, they have to really go ahead and do an investigation, and they have a time set for that investigation to move along. Now that has been removed from the Title IX, and now there is not any specific timelines. So this allows investigator or the person who is moving in the Title IX process, doing the investigation, to really don't have a framework, and it can take a long time. And this again goes back to really increasing re-traumatization and providing what is the word that I'm looking for? Uncertainty for how long is this going to take? What kind of am I going to be graduated, or the perpetrator be graduated and have no accountability of their acts? So it really is really concerning. Definitions of sexual harassment. The definition of sexual harassment is very narrow to include only instances that are severe, pervasive, and objectively offensive. So again, this is a concern because it really leaves some instances of sexual misconduct out, which will not be leaving the open door to basically allow the institution not to do anything about any kind of sexual harassment that is not really up to the level of pervasive. Sorry, I had to think a little bit about that word, the pervasive or severe. So again, this is very objectively offensive. So it gets very narrow, and it leaves a lot of incidents that, if we think about the Title IX before, or even the clearly they're left out. Moving along, mediation. Unregulated mediation is allowed in cases of sexual assault, rape, dating violence, and domestic violence. Informal resolutions are allowed on voluntarily basis for both parties. A process that was not permitted under previous guidance. Now, the lack of accountability in mediation will worsen the already imbalanced power and dynamics between survivor and perpetrators. So, again, this is a new thing this is something that we know that is in the new rule, and it has been is going to be put into place. And again, it's going to really create re-traumatizations for survivors. Number 6 on another rule is religious exemptions. So now, with the religious exceptions, affiliated institutions can claim a Title IX exemption even after they are charged with discrimination. So this gives a protection to some schools. Religious schools have no obligation to inform their students whether they are still adherent to Title IX or can be exempt without submitting any waiver to the Department of Education. This is really important, especially when we're thinking about schools in students who are LGBTQIA plus, or any other student that who has the school has issues with that, with how they identified or how they present, they can use this religious exemption, and really, these students will not be protected. So again, it's a big concern. Number 7, deliberate indifference. With the deliberate indifference, so basically this policy greatly reduces a school obligation to act against sexual harassment. Schools are shielded from liability provided that they are not shown to be deliberate indifference. Raising the liability standards for schools that ignore sexual violence removes accountability, allows the schools to claim they were aware of the violence occurring. So again, another gateway for schools into not really providing any support, to really not investigating or doing anything against in relation to the sexual harassment, sexual violence in their institutions. Number 8, respondent must attend your school. So you can only file a complaint against someone who is attending your university. So this means that if you are assaulted at a school across the street, there are no right to open a Title IX complaint against that person on your campuses. This will force the students to turn to law enforcement or additional legal routes to ensure that their perpetrator will be held accountable and will cause no further harm. So again, it kind of leaves students with no option other than, so in some cases, not even having any options, because they may not want to go to the police and do a criminal investigation. So again, accountability again is thrown out the window with these new rules. Ensure that. So lastly, erasure of queer identity. Basically, your new Title IX Act rules basically are really leaving the queer LGBTQIA identities, I'm going to say LGBTQIA plus identities, with no protections, no really any form to make sure that they can have a fair process. They're left out. The removal of that preponderance of evidence, or for example, the relationship sanctions. These new rules are put in place are really leaving this entire community without any protections with the new rules. So moving along with these, we would like to talk a little bit about some of the opportunities that we have in advocating right now. Like I said at the beginning, maybe creating a different actions, different ways for students as well as the staff and universities and colleges, advocates, to work together to really create policies in your institutions that really go above and be above the final line. So the new Title IX rules basically are a baseline. This is the way that we can actually see them. They are a baseline minimum that any agency or institution can do. So our call to you all is to really advocate and create ways to increase equity in this process and increase protections to survivors of sexual violence in campuses by really working out, creating petitions and demands to your school administrators. So with that, we can talk about a couple ideas, a couple options that you really can ask for. And basically, the first one will be establishing the preponderance of evidence standard. You know, if your school really has no, is your school is able to really work and be able to propose and the preponderance of evidence, that will be fantastic. The only thing, again, really think about if that goes along with your staff. If the staff is unionized, so then we know that that might not be possible. But if there's no barriers to that, demand your administrators to really go for the preponderance of evidence standards. Another one will be to maintain the 60-day time limit from the previous Title IX. You know, really ask for that, because that really creates a framework in where you know, accountability has is increased. It has a way to really not leave things in the air. So maintaining and asking for that 60-day limit, it really helps and empowers, gives a guide, light to the tunnel for those students. They know that they have this framework, that within 60 days something's gonna come out of that investigation, that they're gonna be providing with maybe some solutions. Maybe there will not be anything, but there's something that will be there for them. There's a framework for them to work with. So continued Title IX process during COVID-19, making sure that you are working on Title IX and making sure that you are really finding ways to provide protections to those students during this risk pandemic. This is really a stressful time, and it's important to continue and asking your administrators for ways to keep in contact, keep providing that support, even though we have some constraints and some barriers. But it's important to keep asking and demanding to your school administrators to find ways to making sure that these students who have been victimized are not left out or forgotten in these times of such uncertainty. Number 4, guaranteeing interim accommodations regardless of whether violence occurred, where the violence occurred. So this one again goes back. It's really important that whether if this event happened if this incident happened during in the campus or outside of campus, or wherever they happen, it doesn't matter. It's important to make sure that we can guarantee accommodations to these students. That way they can have some support and be able to continue accessing their education, being able to complete their education goals and being supported through their the investigation, or through this moment where they need the most of support. Next. Also, the petitions of things that we can ask for. It is important to create new sexual misconduct procedures off campus. When violence happens outside of campus. Again, I think that goes along with what we were talking before in the previous one, making sure that these students are provided with some support, with some access to accommodations, and making sure the procedures are really being implemented in the policies with that institution. Number 6 is bar mediation in cases of gender-based violence. Again, like we know that mediation it is a big concern right now, and we know that there is the process of mediation can be used, but can be used for some cases, not necessarily every case that as misconduct should be using mediation. So again, advocating that to making sure that we can bar these form of these processes. That way, those survivors of sexual violence are being protected in some, and not being forced to be re-traumatized. That's what I'm trying to say. So it's really important to talk to your administrators to really bar mediations. To go back to some of the different tools that we have, like Cleary in the previous Title IX, and like here. We also may have a look at the state the policies that we have, right? To make sure that we can bring policies that are created to protect students from the different perspectives of prongs, right? Really, really important. So last but not least, the following, the 2016 Dear Colleague letter on transgender students. Again, this is something that we need to highlight. Like I was saying before, making sure that we're advocating and using different tools that we have that has been created, policies in a federal level and a state level, looking at those and really looking at what can we pull from each one of these already created laws, that it will help protect the students. They will help create a stronger internal policy within the institution. Again, asking those administrators to maintain some of the rules that are from the previous Title IX. Bring that language. Make your internal policy at your school go above of the new Title IX regulations, which are just the basic things that you can do. Nothing is stopping any school to going above and beyond to protect the students who really, really need it, and to create a fair process, right? So again, go back to the 2016 Dear Colleague letter and bring those policies in, ask them to implement those policies in their internal policy. That way, students from the LGBTQIA community can be protected as well. Moving along with the petition, I'm not sure. Some of the things that we have right now is that we have created a resource guidelines for you all, where we gather a lot of information in relation to the new Title IX policy that is going to be implemented in August. So we have make a collection of different things, the different tools that can be important for you to look at. One of them is the toolkit from Know Your Nine. So, which in this toolkit talks about the petitions. So the petitions toolkit really contains a couple basic information that you can be using at your school. Again, tools for you to work with right now before the implementation goes into effect in August. So one of those things that are in the toolkit is the basic education on Title IX and the new rule. So they have a lot of different points they're educating. There's some webinars that are already recorded that you can go and look and learn about, get information about what the new rule is saying, and what are some of the things that you can actually advocate for in your school. And this toolkit also provides some sample tweets and talking points that are really important, so you're prepared when you're going and talking to your school administrators. So the sample kits help you to create awareness within your campus. You can start, tweeting within the whole school, all the students, and really creating awareness and asking for supporters. That way you can make changes in your school. Identifying targets. It is really, really important to identify who are those stakeholders who have the power to make changes, who are those who are going to be working on creating the process of for your specific school. So identifying them, talking to them, sending them information, asking for your rights, right, for the rights of survivors, and really creating a way to change and creating a way to good awareness within your school, a campaign that it will help you make sure that we can mitigate or lessen all the new impacts that the new Title IX rule is going to have at schools. Moving along with those, we have some logistics on gaining signatures and delivering the petition. Again, you can ask for, you can create these campaigns where you're asking and getting signatures, and really moving along in convincing those administrators, right? But the more students you get involved, the more awareness that you create, the more powerful that petition is going to be, and that way that you can make sure that you are making that change in your institution. Lastly, that toolkit talks about debriefing and following up after any petition is delivered. So it is really, really important. Again, you created the campaign, you asked for signatures, you asked for support, you created your petition, you deliver your petition to the school administrators. But then it is important to really gather up and see where you got, and again, debriefing and finding new ways to create campaigns and create awareness to keep fighting and keep the fight into blocking these new rules which are really devastating and are actually protecting just one side of the balance, right? It's these new rules are really protecting, just seem to be protecting the perpetrator, but not really creating an equity process for all. Equity or equitable? Equitable, that's the word. Sorry. Okay, so it looks like we have come to, we have finalized that conversation with Title IX, but we also would like, before we go part away from you, we would like to really highlight the important about self-care. Just don't forget about self-care. This is a couple things that we're bringing you as some tools. Like there's a couple of webinars that CCASA had created, and also a PDF document that has a lot of different ideas about how to really do a little bit of self-care, because it is important to take care of yourself. Because if you don't really take care of yourself, then you won't be able to continue this battle. You won't be able to provide support to anyone. The support starts with us, taking care of ourselves. That way we can continue this important battle in the campus field, sexual violence. So please, 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 as always, we here at CCASA, self-care is a priority. We really ask you to have a plan, to look for that, take care of yourself, and also help bringing that awareness to others that are working with you, talking about, talking about self-care, asking them, what are you going to do today? After any kind of meeting that you have, maybe you were talking and doing some planning for sexual assault awareness within your campus. So after you finish those things, always make sure that you have that conversation about how you all are going to do some self-care with each other. Resources, again, like I mentioned before, we have a couple of those things that will be provided to you via email with a PowerPoint presentation. Important points from Title Know Your 9, the 9 things that you need to know about the new rule, talking points, how to identify those change makers. All of these amazing tools are in that resources list and also on our website in the campus page for Title IX. So please, please reach out to us. We're here for you. We're here to help you. Let us know. You can send us an email to the CCASA info email, and we'll be happy to provide more information in more ways to bring awareness campaigns and different things within your campus. And also, we would like to invite you to make sure that you are part of our campus meeting in July 16th. That is really, really important. That because we will be really diving in deep about Title IX and also about other different policy at the federal level that you can use, and as well as the state level. So I really invite you to be part of our campus in July. And with this, I would like to thank you again. Thank you for being part of this webinar. Thank you for doing what you do. Without you, it will be really, really hard for survivors to really be able to navigate these times of uncertainty. So thank you for everything you do, for being in the front lines, for showing up to all the events and trying to learn and keep an on point about ways to advocate and to make a change within the sexual violence awareness and fight that we have here in the state. Thank you again for everything. Thank you, and we invite you to be with us on the next time.
Great. Thank you, Agueda. Look out for some links below in the description of some of the things that, that Agueda mentioned during this video. And we thank you, and we hope to see you at a future meeting or webinar or event.